This dress you see right here has an inbuilt corset with asymmetric drapings and off-shoulder puff sleeve. A very detailed and beginner-friendly video is what you are about to watch. Stick around and let's do it together. To start with, we first would have to draft our basic bodice. This is my front pattern and that is our back pattern. In case you'd want to know how we did this, I'll put a link in the description box so you could check it out. If you have any other means by which you also draft your basic bodice, you can use that and then we go ahead with our modification. I'll first start with the front, then to the back. We'll draw a line 8 inches below the waistline. And this will serve as our shoulder to hip length. On the hip line, we divide our hip measurement into 4 and then add 2-inch seam allowance to it because we had added 2 inches seam allowance to the rest of the bodice. Our model's hip is 42 divided by 4 gives us 10.5 plus our 2 inches seam allowance. We connect the side seam here to this very point. We mark the nipple interval we have here on the hip line. Then we connect these 2 dot lines to this point. We move from the shoulder to nipple line upwards by 4 inches. This is because that is where it covers the bust of our client. At this point, we want to widen this very dart so that it equals the dart at the underbust and the waist. We measure this dart and we have 1 inch. And this is also giving us 2 inches, meaning we are 1 inch short at the top here. And so we'll add half of an inch to the left side and half of an inch to the right side. Then we connect these 2 points to where the shoulder dart ended. From the shoulder to nipple line, we move 2.5 inches at the center front. At this point, we are going to mark half of an inch. That is because we want 1 inch interval at the cleavage area. I would want to lift our client's bust a little upward. Because of that, I would move from where the shoulder to underbust line is by half of an inch. And then straighten these dart lines to touch that half marks we just marked. Then we draw an arc to connect these 2 points. We draw an arc to connect the point at the top here also to this very point at the cleavage area. Using a similar arc, we are going to join this very dart also to the nipple point and onward to where the shoulder dart ended. On the shoulder to nipple line, we are marking the nipple to nipple measurement we have here also on the other side, starting from where the nipple point is. Then we use a similar arc to also connect this point to that point which we just marked. Using the same arc that we used in joining these 2 points, we would also join the half inch mark that we had here to the shoulder to nipple point and onward to where the shoulder dart also ended. We will measure the distance from the underbust here all around the cup till it gets to the top and compare it with this very one. Wherever this one got to, we will get to that point here and then we'll truncate our line. Measuring this, I get 6 3/4. And so we mark the same thing on this very line. We are going to draw an S-like shape from the point here all the way into our armhole. I'll mark 1 inch from this very point towards the side seam. And then mark 2 inches at the hip line here. Then draw a straight line to connect these 2 points. Because I would want to snatch the waist a bit more, I'll take off 1/2 of an inch from the waistline. And then we'll draw a line from the hip line to connect the half mark we marked here, and also to end on the shoulder to nipple line. On our side seam, we are going to mark 3 inches from the waistline downwards, and then at the center front we'll mark 6 inches from the waist downwards. This is what is giving us the length of our inbuilt corset. On the side seam, we will take off our seam allowance, and so our seam allowance is 2 inches. It will be taken off before the shaping would be possible. Because we'll be folding that onto this and this onto that before we shape the down part, it is much appropriate to cut off this before we do the folding. I'll call this CF, I'll call this side, and this side 2. I want to get 3 pieces for each of the caps, 1 for the top and 2 beneath. I'll draw a line from the shoulder dart point here to this side of the cap and to this side of the other cap. I'll call this C1 and this C2 and this S1 and S2. I would want to tighten this dart and that dart just a little bit so that there's not much space at the lower section of her belly. And so we are taking 1/4 of an inch on this side of this very dart, 1/4 of an inch on this other side too. But when it comes to this very one, we are taking 1/2 an inch. We are moving from this very portion towards this side by 1/2, just as we are done for this side. We connect the new point to the corresponding darts on the waistline. Then we fold these new darts so that we refine our hemline here. So this will be the new hemline we would have for our Victorian corset. We'll go ahead and cut. So we're going to fold this dart onto the other so that C1 and S1 becomes one piece. This is our front pattern already cut. We'll move to the back pattern and then modify. We mark 8 inches from the waist downwards to represent our shoulder to hip line. Then we divide our hip measurement into 4 and add our 2-inch seam allowance. Then we draw a line to connect the side seam to the new hip line. The nipple to nipple measurement which we brought to the back, we'll bring the same thing to the hip line. And connect these two dot lines to it. We will take off our seam allowance and then divide the distance from that very portion to where the dot point is into 2. We repeat same for the waistline. We'll draw a line to connect these 2 points, extending it to touch the hip line. At this point, we're taking in 1/2 inch to snatch the waist just a bit more. And we'll draw a line to connect this point and that point, all to the 1/2 inch we marked. On the side seam, we are moving 3 inches from the waistline downwards, and at the center back, we are moving 2 inches. At the side seam, we'll take off our 2-inch seam allowance. We'll fold this dart onto this and this onto that so that we'll be able to shape the hemline. So we'll first cut this off so that folding the darts will be easier for us. Then we'll label this as 5, 6, and 7 and cut them out. And these are our back parting pieces. These are our parting pieces which we are going to use to cut our interface, cut our lining, and then cut our fashion fabrics. I have used the parting pieces to cut our interface, which has also been fused with the lining. And as well, we have cut the fashion fabrics. This is how I added the seam allowance. CF was on fold, and so it's been opened. We have added the seam allowance to this very side and to this side as well. When it comes to the side 1, as I called it, the allowance was added on both the left and the right side, and also it was added in here. There's no allowance on the top, neither do you have any below. When it comes to the side 2, there is no allowance on the side which will be attached to the number 5, no. But the seam allowance is added on this side which will be attached to side 1. C2 and then S2, allowances have been added all around them. But for the C1 and S1, allowance was added on the side, down here, and on the other side. At the top here, no seam allowance was added. When we go to the back pattern, we have added our seam allowance not on the side here, which will be joined to the front pattern, but then on the other direction, which will be attached to number 6. Number 6 has allowance on both the left and the right sides. And number 7 also has allowance on this side, which will be attached to number 6. So these are the allowances as we have attached them to it. We are going to join the pieces. We are joining the front pieces, and then we join the back pieces. So these are our pieces as we've joined them together. This is the fashion fabric, and these are the linings. We have also fused our interfaces on the linings. It is now time to fix our brassiere caps. This is C1 and S1. We are going to join it to C2 and S2. We first will join C2 and S2 together. Then we will measure the distance from the tip here all the way to this side. And then we'll use that to cut our bone. I get 4 1/2. And so I'll cut 3.5. Then we stitch this on, making sure that we leave some allowance beneath and another on top. And so this is what we get. The next step would be to attach C1 and S1 on top of C2 and S2. We'll then open it up, and then just as we did for the other side, we would measure from here to the other end and also use the same thing to cut our bone. But then we'll take off about 1 inch, leaving half of an inch here and half inch at the other side. So this is the bone. We're going to fix it in here. This is it neatly stitched. It is also well structured. So these are our boning channels to which you are going to fix the various bones. All that you do is that you measure from the tip here to the down part, and then you take off about 1 inch so that we place the bones like this, and we have a little bit of space on top and at the bottom here. We'll repeat same for this very side. We're going to create notches all around before we fix our cap. This will make fixing it a bit easier for us. Looking at the cap, you see that we have the C2 and then the C1. That is the part that is being attached to the CF. So we are making sure that we match this seam to this very seam. This is it. We go ahead and stitch the other side also to this. And so this is it, beautifully sewn. We'll go ahead and attach the other one, and then we'll continue. Bear in mind, this is our lining. Also, we have done same for the fashion fabric itself. We continue by fixing our bones onto the various channels. This is our fashion fabric. These are top stitches that I've done. These are decorative. And these are the back patterns. We have also attached the bones to it, and we have repeated same for the others. So have you also top stitched the fashion fabric. So this is my organza fabric. I have folded it in 4 layers, cutting a width of 5 inches. This is what we'll use for our pleat. We fold it on like this. After folding it like this, we're going to fuse these two with our hem tape. Some call it hem tape, some call it hemming stiff or gum stiff, whatever name you call it. We're going to place it in between, and then we give it a hot press. The next step is to pleat this. So this being the center, I'll do 3 inches pleat, 1 inch space, 3 inches pleat, 1 inch space. So we'll go ahead and stitch the base here to secure it. After stitching it, it's now time to fix it onto our corset. We align the center of the pleat to the center front of our corset. And we're going ahead to stitch it on till we are done here. And then we do the same for the other side. We're going to sandwich this into the fashion fabric and the lining itself. We are matching the seams of both the fashion fabric and the lining. After this, we will create notches all around our stitches and then do a top stitch on the lining. We are pushing all the excess seam under towards this direction so that we'll top stitch it. It's now time to insert our brazier caps. And so we are attaching this with the help of a glue gun. Repeat same for the other bra. After inserting the caps, it's now time to turn over the fashion fabric. You need to really work this out very well so that the roundness you get here is able to lie right on the side of our caps. Then we'll go ahead to secure it. You can do so by stitching or even with the help of a glue gun. And so we do this till we have been able to secure it all around neatly. So this is how beautiful our cap looks. Right. What you do next would be to also finish our back pattern. And so we put the fashion fabric and the lining together. We'll go ahead and stitch the top here. After stitching the two together, it's now time to seal the back where we'll be doing our lacing. And so I'll flip this good sides together and also run stitches here. We turn this to the good side. This is our skirt, the front and the back pattern. Right now we're going to hem our Victorian corset. I'll just turn it inward and then top stitch. I will do same for the back pieces as well. You can decide to pipe or any form of hemming you'd want to give it. And so we're going to run overlock stitches all around because this is a stretchy fabric and then we are not going to line it. After neatening the edges of our skirt, we will mark 2.5 inches from the bottom here upwards. This represents our waistline because remember, during the drafting process, we added 3 inches to be able to get to our hip area. And so we are taking off 2.5. We have hemmed the edge and we'd also sew 1/4 inch. And so we are marking 2.5. And then we'll place the skirt on the top here. Then we'll go ahead to stitch this. For the back, we are taking 2.5 inches on the side, 1.5 inches at the center back. This is because we added 2 inches to the back as extension and 3 inches on the side, and so we are taking 1/2 inch from both. With the back, we will stitch till we get to about 2 inches away from the edge here. After sewing this on, this is what you have. Right. And this is the back. We are going to finish this edge with the help of our hem tape. Right. And so this is it. We are doing the same thing for the other side, and then we'll continue with the front. For the draping, I've cut this other fabric. It's just a little wider than the skirt itself, and also a bit longer. It measures 25 by 28. And so what you're going to do is that I have finished this very edge, but then I've left the other side unfinished. I'm going to place it here. That is where I want the drape to end. I'm going to place this here, and then I'll stitch. And so after stitching it, we are going to fold on the pleats. Because of the draping, I want to pull this a bit so that it stretches out. This is what we have. I'll go ahead and stitch this to secure the ends and do same for the other side. And so this is what you see at the back. You see that the skirt itself is quite longer, and I've made the drapes a bit shorter so that this would stretch to flatten out the drapes when it's worn. After securing them, we will cut off the excess from both ends. Then we measure the distance from this part to that part. I get about 7 inches. We take another fabric and then we put it on fold like this, good size together, and measure the 7 inches plus our seam allowance. And so in total, we are getting about 7.5 inches, like this. We're going ahead to cut this and then stitch one side and then the other side. Right, we'll go and run overlock stitches to finish the rough edges. So after stitching this, we'll go ahead and place it at this part of our dress. We'll go ahead and stitch this on. The next step after doing this would be to place the back patterns on the front and then stitch the side seams. And so after stitching the sides, it's left with closing the back and also fixing our zipper at the center back. So we'll go ahead and do that and we'll come back to continue. It's now time to cut the sleeves, and so we want a very exaggerated puff sleeve. This is what we're going to do. Mark 15 inches from this side and we add just about 3 inches. Then we measure the length of about 23 inches. And we mark a line from here to join our 3 inches mark. Then we go ahead and cut this. Then we're doing a casing for both the cap head and the cuff. These are the casings I've done, 4 inches wide. I folded it into 2 inches. And so what you're going to do right now would be to fix it on both edges. That is at the top here, and also on it will serve as our cuff for the edge. So we're just going to stitch them on. After the casing, I've cut 10-inch elastic for the cuff of our sleeve and then 12 inches for the cap. And so we're going to insert them respectively. This is what we have for one sleeve, and you repeat same for the other sleeve. Yes, we have inserted our elastic. We've also knitted the edges beautifully well. This is what you are doing. We're going to sew off our seam allowance, and then we'll come back and fix our sleeve onto our beautiful corset. And so we're doing 5 inches in front and then 3 inches at the back. And so this is it. Our sleeve is nicely fixed. We're going to repeat same for the other side, and then we are done with the dress. We would only be left with the embellishment at the front here.